I wanted to do 3 pieces together having an element of color in the middle, and then using translucent fiberglass on the ends so you can see into the piece. This whole body of work starts out with a wave pattern intersecting a square. As they go together, they will combine and make so you can actually see it continue and do a grid. I was very fascinated with Brancusi, his endless column, all the modular constructions of the 70s. Fiberglass with pearl gold paint on it and laminated wood. And this is Ferrari red over wood. This is poplar skin over. It was commissioned in 1992, and when I finished building it, then I had to install it. And I had never really seen the piece installed. I got a quick glimpse of it, and I hadn't seen it since until about 3 years ago, when the collector was downsizing his house and brought it back in trade for another piece. And I was very delighted to get it back. In wanting to put this piece together and construct it, I realized that to bend the wood in this manner, I had to go back to age-old steam construction. They made boats and different furniture and things. I cut little thin strips of wood here and then heated them up and made a template. And with this turn and this movement, what I needed to do is take the fiberglass, which is kind of stiff but pliable, push it down in the center, and then make a negative clamp on here to clamp it down, and I epoxied it. After I was finished, then I prepared the surface for a gold pearl. And the whole idea of wanting to be able to see into it has really gone in, the whole body of my work is about the interiors, about the space. And it really has a lot to do with the cool school before me didn't really investigate the interiors except for Craig Kaufman and Larry Bell. What I wanted to do is have the constructions where you could see all the construction. And then with the juxtaposition with the opaque colors. Cosme means desert flower and Apache, and the flower's only this big. My grandfather, full-blooded Mescalero Apache, married in the family. That was his name, and so I wanted to do this piece. I wanted to blow that up, and so there's 9 sides here. It was a little bit difficult to deal with, but the fun part is that it rotates. You never want to really tell people that. This goes back to when I was manipulating and using the squares, like the triptych. It was all based on the squares. These little pieces, the squares inside of here, and I wanted to turn them a little bit. And all of this body of work, I introduced a random wave pattern that would put a movement on the piece so it would give it extra life. I was looking at artists like Brian Hunt and other artists where they did airships and things, but they were very static. And I really admired the work, but I wanted to have some movement to it. Steel, fiberglass on the ends. And, it's nothing you want to encourage people to do, but tactily it's nice. The covering of the piece with natural wood and wanting to leave it natural was a connection with the earth and with not having man-made materials. Although I have steel here and fiberglass, I wanted the centers, all the centers of my work, all the construction in this period of time was found wood. I would drive around the streets and go in the alleys and find all the wood. That's how I built everything. Somehow I felt like I was repurposing the wood. And then you'd buy the poplar and I wanted to skin it over it. And at the angles like that, you can really stretch the poplar. But I left it raw, so it was very earthy. The relationship I had with my father was very loving, but it was very contentious. So part of this is a pod, and sort of what relationships can do. You can have the stripes, and it's like a metaphor for prison incarceration in a sense. It had nothing to do with that, but it's sort of how a relationship can hold you down. And if you notice, there's little tiny slits in here. So what I did is I had found several letters I had written to my father over the years. We spent 2 periods of time during our life where we didn't talk to each other for 6 years. And I would write a letter. I sent some of the letters, but some of them, it's like, I was never going to get it anyway. So I found these letters. So I built the piece and I could insert the letters in here so they're in here. Well, I've had it in a couple of exhibitions in the 90s, and I would get a phone call or a letter from someone saying, thank you very much. It was very cathartic. I wrote a letter to my dad and I put it in your piece. You know, and I wanted to say, well, no, that's my dad, but if it helps anybody else like it helped me, you know, and if you look at it from the back, you can see the letters coming through it. It's covered with fiberglass and painted raw on the back and painted on the front. And it comes out of the ground because I want it, it just looks like it's hovering on the ground to have that tension of a thought or an emotion. That it's not really anchored, it's floating on its own. There are some photographs and letters in here. There's many of them. I don't know how many you can see. And the discolorization is the epoxy on the fiberglass, you know, aging. But there's several letters. Now, it was turned upside down at some point, so that's why some of them are high. But most of them are usually down here. This time when I was making this work, this is very much akin to Letters to Dad, where I was really dealing with the yin-yang and different, like the keyboard, the stripes. This is the same construction on the back of the fiberglass, and it's very, very light. The title of this is Vol Toccata. In this time, I started really trying to refer my work to movements in music, instruments, different things, where the title was obscure, but if you actually looked into the title of what it was, then it would kind of give you an idea of what the piece was about. Now the way it comes off of the wall, it's very interesting. It sort of curves and comes out. What I really like about this one, it's untitled, is I had the structure without the movement here sitting in the studio, and I looked at it, and it's that period of time when you're working and you're no matter what you do, as long as you keep working. And I envisioned that piece, but I cut the sides and I just moved each segment to where it would go on. I really just kind of wanted to see what it would do. And in that process, it has a plastic feel to it. It's like ice cream. It has a real fanciful thought about it. And then you can see the shadows is what I was really playing on. You have the darker shadows here and the lighter little steps. At this point of art making, I really started realizing that the amount of time that you put into one piece can never be recovered financially. The most important thing about that is keeping the studio running, so you have to figure out somehow, and having another job was not quite what I wanted to do, so I had to make it work for me. So what I did is I started making molds of the pieces. And this is one piece, and it's just really silky, shiny, and you can also, again, you can see the movement in the piece, how it moves from top to bottom, and has that flow to it that gives it its own energy. And this is translucent, you can see right into it, right through it. So as you turn it, you get the reflection of the pearl that's on the inside, and you can see the construction. And that's the other nice thing of installing it in this manner, where you can really get to see the different sides of it. In 1993, started transferring to a different body of work. Went away from the square pieces and more into the round organic pieces. I started putting a twist in it in the ovals and putting the ovals along with the construction and with the holes in it. Now, the segments of this, it's a homage to Brancusi, endless column that could go on forever. The tower is to Louis Sullivan, the architect, and putting them together. These pieces are called the Madame X's, and that's an homage to John Singer Sargent's Madame X, the painting that was deemed too risque to be shown. Well, these are hardly risque, but they do have a female form, a figure form to them. And they also are in segments, which is an homage to Brancusi, making it an endless column. You could keep stacking them. The ovals are an homage to perihelion and periphelion, circulation of the moon around the Earth. All of those different aspects that I really like in physics and microbiology and in astrophysics, I really try to put into the work. So part of this is the interior, this being a DNA strand. These would indicate, instead of negative markers, positive markers in the DNA structure. So instead of having breast cancer or something like that markers, these would be maybe for gifted people. They would be an athlete or something.